Welcome everyone to the May Business of Alternative Protein seminar. Today we're going to learn about an exciting new life cycle assessment or LCA tool for alternative proteins that was developed by Foodsteps in collaboration with the Good Food Institute or GFI. This software will enable companies that manufacture alternative proteins to evaluate their products' environmental impacts, optimize production, and make substantiated, credible environmental claims, which we all know are in high demand in the world today. My name is Sharon Murray. I am GFI's Investor Engagement Manager. And for those of you who may be new to the work of the Good Food Institute, we are an international nonprofit that is developing the roadmap for a sustainable, secure, and just protein supply. We identify the most effective solutions, mobilize resources and talent, and empower partners across the food system to make alternative protein accessible, affordable, delicious, and I'll add today, certainly sustainable. Before we kick off the presentation, just a couple of housekeeping announcements. This seminar will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel. There are quite a few great webinars on there for you to peruse. We're also going to email everyone who has registered a copy of the recording and the presentation that will be given today. Throughout the session, please ask your questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat. This just helps us keep track of them more easily. We'll answer a few quick questions in writing throughout the seminar, and then we'll make sure to save all the good ones for the end. We'll have about 30 minutes to address the remainder then. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our three speakers for today. So first, we've got Tom Chapman. Tom is a food systems impact advisor with a focus on alternative proteins. He's been leading the development of a range of industry tools for GFI for the last couple of years, so he may not be a new face for some of you. And that's included the GFI and FAIR ESG framework for alternative protein companies and the LCA guide for alternative protein manufacturers. He was also recently, head of impact for a plant and fermentation enabled food tech VC fund. Welcome, Tom. Next, we've got Paul Arnott, the head of product at Foodsteps. So Paul is responsible for the strategy, roadmap, and delivery of the Foodsteps lifecycle assessment platform. He has 15 years of experience in product management and software engineering, including 7 years as the product lead of a suite of sports performance management tools at Huddle, the global leader in this field. Welcome, Paul. And last, but certainly not least, we've got Joe Duncan-Google, the Chief Scientific Officer at Foodsteps. There, Joe is tasked with developing the leading Foodsteps methodology and spearheading research to enhance our understanding of food impacts and ways to mitigate them. Joe has been part of the Foodsteps team for more than 4 years and possesses both an MSci and BSc in Natural Sciences from the University of Cambridge. And it's been truly a pleasure to work with Joe and Paul throughout this process. Thank you, Joe. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom to take us away.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Let me just share my screen and then we can kick off. So hopefully you can all see that. So in terms of what to, can you see that? Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay. Great. So in terms of what to expect today, first off, I'll provide a bit of a context around this tool and why it's important before providing a brief intro to life cycle assessments or LCAs, just so that we're all on the same page. And then we'll look at the objectives that we had for this software, and I'll try and cover these 3 points fairly quickly so that I can then hand over to Paul, who can give us a quick intro to Foodsteps before diving into the most exciting part, which is an actual demo of the software itself. We'll then wrap up with next steps and the Q&A. So why is this needed? Well, the global demand for meat is set to almost double by 2050. And our current system of meat production is already driving 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And as you can see by the visual from Climate Action Tracker, even the most optimistic scenario, with all of the actions and policies currently committed, we are unable to meet the Paris Agreement. In fact, without a reduction in conventional animal agriculture, it will be impossible to meet the goal of 1.5 degrees. Alternative proteins offer a crucial solution to decarbonize our protein production system while meeting the global demand for protein. And why is this? Well, there is a clear and growing body of evidence showing that alternative proteins, they strongly outperform conventional meat on environmental impacts. These studies demonstrate that alternative proteins can be produced with up to 98% fewer emissions, 97% less land, and 99% less water than conventional meat. However, the number of these studies is still quite limited, which means that companies wanting to make company and product-specific environmental claims lack robust, standardized, and representative supporting data. This can result in long, expensive studies that offer one point-in-time assessment, which, if not done right, can face criticisms of greenwashing and damage both the individual companies and the industry more broadly. So in order to address this problem, we've been working on a solution that looks at covering the data gaps, minimizing the costs, reducing the time it takes to do the studies, and then subsequently also improving the accuracy of the LCA process. Before I dive into that, let's just quickly cover life cycle assessments and what they are. So life cycle assessments, or LCAs, are the most widely used tool for quantifying and evaluating the environmental impact of producing goods and services. And conducted accurately, LCAs provide valuable data to inform environmental, financial, and operational decisions. And so how do they work? Well, the production of any product follows a pathway through space and time, referred to as a life cycle. When conducting an LCA, we look at and assess each stage of this production process, starting with raw materials or resources, through processing, transport, retail, and finally waste management. At each stage of this life cycle, resources such as land, water, and energy are used, otherwise known as inputs, to create products, and waste, otherwise known as outputs. Some of these outputs are intended and desirable, such as the food itself, while others are not, such as greenhouse gas emissions. All of these inputs and outputs affect the planet, our economy, our societies, and ultimately us as individuals. And life cycle assessments are kind of the recognized international method for quantifying and assessing the impact of a product or service. There are broadly three types of LCAs manufacturers can choose from. So there's commissioning a full scope LCA, seen as the gold standard. It is a bespoke and comprehensive LCA that measures as much of the production's process as possible. The pathway is the most resource intensive, but it also provides the most reliable results that can, when included in the scope of the study, be used for external audiences. However, a bespoke and comprehensive LCA can cost anything between $50,000 to $100,000 or more. The second pathway is similar, however, with a more limited scope. So this could be focusing on a specific part of the production process or reducing, say, the number of environmental issues being assessed. The pathway still provides a level of tailoring to specific manufacturing processes, but it is not comprehensive and it may not be appropriate for external reporting. A limited scope LCA will cost a lot less though, potentially as low as $20,000. And then there's a third scope, which we'll be focusing on today, which is around LCA modeling software. This is where an LCA is conducted through an automated model with a prescribed set of methodological assumptions, options, and impact categories. These solutions are becoming increasingly accurate and offer an easy solution to generating an impact, a quick impact assessment. So before we move on, Kimberly, I'd love if you could throw up a quick poll for everyone to answer. I'm really interested to understand across the audience, how do you currently conduct your life cycle assessments and for your products? So we've got a range of different options here. I'll give you all a minute to answer this. We've got commissioning a full scope LCA, commissioning a limited scope LCA, utilizing an automated modeling software, a combination of those different options, or maybe you're not doing or not conducting an LCA at all. Maybe you're just interested in online modeling software. So great if you can provide a quick answer on that. How are we looking, Kimberly? Are we almost ready to show the results? 50%. Give another couple of seconds. Okay, let's have a look at the results now if we can. Oh, really interesting. Okay, so not currently conducting LCAs is the highest. Well, this is excellent. You're in the right place if you're looking to start. We've obviously reached the right audience, which is very reassuring in terms of, I'm hoping that you're interested in doing one anyway. So that's great. Thanks for answering that. So if we move on, and thanks again for answering the poll. So what are our objectives and why, and what have we been working on and why? What are our goals? So in partnership with Foodsteps, we have worked to expand what their current software can do to incorporate functionality to evaluate the environmental impact of alternative protein products. The software will be free to use. It will have a premium version that Foodsteps are offering with additional functionality. But broadly, the scope of the product will include plant-based products, so all the different protein types for plant-based products. It includes some for biomass fermentation, and over the rest of the year, we'll be really focusing on including precision fermentation as well. Unfortunately, we haven't got cultivated meat in there yet, as it's really too early in the industry for that. But we do hope to include that in the subsequent year. The free version will enable users to model 5 products to understand impact across 5 impact categories, including GHG emissions, water use, land use, eutrophication, and acidification. The overall objectives are threefold. First off, we wanted to provide a no-cost entry point for companies to engage with the impact of their products. We also wanted to drive progress in collecting, integrating, and understanding data on the environmental impact of novel ingredients and processes. As a lot of the ingredients and processes for alternative proteins are relatively new, there isn't data, as I said before, there isn't data available for many of them. And so we wanted to really create a collective effort across the industry to start identifying those data points and getting access to them. And then third, prepare and position companies to communicate their environmental impact to stakeholders. And why did we choose a software platform? Well, there are many, many values to a platform, but I've just put 6 here for us to focus on. To start with, comprehensive LCAs take time. Studies need to be designed, parameters refined, data collected, analyzed, and then written up. And so these LCAs can sometimes take 6 months or more. But with our platform, the results are instant, which really opens up so many other opportunities. So, such as being able to update whenever you need it, whether that's scaling your operations, or you want to quickly understand changes to your inputs or your ingredients, the platform changes as you change and provides you that instant feedback. The third point on here is also many LCAs, or all LCAs, are based on huge data sets. They require a lot of secondary data. And unlike other data sets, working with Foodsteps, we focused on making sure that this database is continuously growing. And that's really important. It's because of the nature of alternative proteins ingredients. As I said, the novel ingredients and the novel processes, we're getting data all the time. New data is coming and getting involved. And so this really enables us to kind of continuously update the database and offer that instant data to our users as well. The fourth point, the fourth value, another huge value, is that the platform enables experimentation. You can go in, you can swap out different ingredients, and quickly understand what the full impact will be, whether that's switching, say, soy protein with mung bean protein, or many other different types of ingredients that we have on there, providing that instant feedback that allows you to really understand the direction you're going. Fifth, we are able to also estimate impact even if you do not have all the data available. Given that we have a lot of secondary data in there, we're able to backfill a lot of the data. And so while this may not be appropriate for external reporting, it still gives you a strong sense of where you are today. And then finally, through GFI, we're providing a free version of the software. However, even the premium version will still be cheaper than a full scope LCA. So with that, and without further ado, I'd love to hand over to Paul, who can then introduce Foodsteps and demo the software. So over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Tom. And also thanks to Sharon and Kimberly and all of GFI for the opportunity to present to you all today. Obviously, at Foodsteps, we're very excited to announce the launch of this software. And I wanted to start by thanking the 25 or so alt protein manufacturers that have helped us via our user testing program along the way. I've just seen the list of attendees today, and I know that many of you are on the call today. Honestly, you've been a critical part of us being able to build something that we know is going to be valuable and useful. And you've also given us some great input that's fueling our future roadmap beyond the launch today. For those who don't know Foodsteps, I'll just give a quick intro. We're a UK-based food technology company that helps food businesses measure, communicate, and reduce their impact on the environment. Our company was formed out of research done at the University of Cambridge, and we also work closely with the Hestia initiative out of Oxford University. Our customers include some of the largest food service companies in the UK, including Compass. We also have partnerships with a number of non-commercial food industry organisations, and our Chief Scientific Officer, Joe, who you met earlier, is part of a working group at DEFRA, which is a UK government department that's looking at the Scope 3 methodology. We also have relationships with the climate action NGO RAP and the World Resources Institute, who recently validated our methodology for food service. At our core, our organisation, we're really a science and data company. So we've invested a lot of effort in researching publicly available LCA studies on food. And we've also put a lot of effort into our own internal research. Our research is global. So we've sourced studies from around the world that cover food production in over 120 countries. And we've needed to do this for our food service customers, particularly our large multinational catering companies like Compass, who have global sourcing. As Tom said, we've just found this great opportunity to leverage our existing research and to bring it to the alt protein community. We've had some great guidance from GFI, and our scientists at Foodsteps have spent over 12 months in research specific to alternative protein ingredients. We've used that research to augment our existing research. As Tom mentioned, we focused our research on plant-based and biomass fermentation. We're constantly improving our database and our coverage across the alt protein ingredient space. And I guess really excited to continue to learn from you all as we roll this software out and learn what we're doing well and where the gaps are in our research as well. Before I dive into the demo, just a quick note on our approach to specificity in LCAs. So we generate impact data which is geographically specific to the processing location. We have, as an organisation, we have many ways to increase the accuracy of an assessment by incorporating primary data from different parts of your supply chain and life cycle. But we know that not every organisation has access or the resources to collect that information from day one, especially for those of you who are entering the LCA world today. So our approach with this software has been to build a free solution that gives you an indicative impact assessment as quickly as possible, with the ability to adapt to your specific needs on things like system boundary, ingredient specificity, and geographic specificity as time goes on. So without further ado, I'll jump into the demo now, and I'll share my screen. Bear with me. Just pop up a slide that shows the agenda for the demo. These are the things that we're going to cover today. It's not going to be a coverage of every single feature of the software, but everything that I do demonstrate today is going to be available in the free version. And after the webinar, we'll give you instructions on how to sign up and use this free version. And you'll also have the opportunity to request a demo meeting with Foodsteps. So to start with, let's start with a quick tour of the software from the top down. When you first log in to Foodsteps, you're taken to the All Products page here, and this shows a card for each of the products that you've already created. Now, when you sign up for the first time, we'll provide you with some sample traditional protein products to allow you to compare your impact to those as a guide, and I'll show you how to do that during the demo as well. There's a menu system on the left. This is fairly standard, and so most of the things I'll demonstrate today, you access these features via the menu system on the left. There's also a user or admin menu section on the right, and the only reason I'll mention this now is to call out the Foodsteps forum, which is a community forum which has a bunch of hopefully useful resources, but I guess most specifically it's got a group of tutorials to cover what we'll cover today, plus more to help you get up and running. It's also got some answers to frequently answered questions and some detail about our methodology as well. So the moment you sign up as a free user, you get access to that forum, and you can start digging into those details while you're playing around with the software as well. Now, to create your first product in Foodsteps, you click on the Add button here and then Add New Product. I'm not going to do that for this demo. I'm in fact going to edit one that I've created earlier, which is a soy protein burger. But the interface that you see now is exactly the same interface that you'd see when you were creating your own product. Now, when you define your product, the first thing to do is to decide on the quantity of product that you want to assess. Seems obvious, but it's an important part because it affects your assessment pretty significantly. Now, for example, you might want to assess a retail product if you're selling products for consumers. And so you might choose a quantity of product that is sold in a single retail SKU. Or maybe if it's a product that you sell to another manufacturer to use as an ingredient, if you're an ingredient manufacturer selling B2B, you might choose to assess a larger quantity that you might typically sell in bulk. And there's other variations as well. Obviously, some of you might be selling to consumers, but also selling to food service organizations. And again, you might sell in larger quantities than you might sell at retail. So you can choose the quantity that you want there. You enter it into this field here. Important to note, this is a net weight, so it doesn't include any packaging that you might want to include in the assessment as well. I've given it a name up the top here. You then specify the ingredients, and it's really important that you specify water, and this includes both any water that ends up in the final product, like water that you might use in soup, as well as any water that you might use in the manufacturing process itself, like boiling or steaming, but you might not naturally think of that as an ingredient to the product. It becomes particularly important when there's significant quantities of water when we report on the water use impact category. The way you add an ingredient, and this is obviously a very simple example. It's a burger with just 3 ingredients, but as part of the demo, I'll show you how to add an ingredient. You click Add, you start entering into this ingredient field here, and as you do so, you can see a drop-down list of the ingredients in our database containing the text that you type in, and you'll select from that list. Now, it's important to look for the most accurate representation of your ingredient as possible. If I start typing in soy protein, for example, you can see a number of options there. This particularly would be relevant for the alt protein industry. You can see we have options around isolate, concentrate, and also some more detailed options around the processing or the manufacturing technique used as well. So for some ingredients, we've been able to develop or research more specific data specific to the ingredient. In other cases, there's just not that sufficient detail available. But if you do have the option and you are aware of the detail of the ingredient that you're using, then choose the most detailed one possible. I've just chosen soy protein isolate here in my example, and I'll now jump onto the next screen, which is the processing screen. Obviously, this is where you enter information about your processing. And to be clear, it's about the processing of your product, not of the individual ingredients that you use, which we assume come from suppliers. The first thing that you see on this page is the location, and this is the processing location, the location of your processing facility. Now, this location is configured by Foodsteps at the time your account is created. So for me, that is USA. For you, if you're signing up to the free account, you'll choose that country at the time of sign up. It is possible to change that, but to do that, you need to contact Foodsteps, and then we'll make that change in our system for you. You then move on to the physical input section. And again, you can see the list of ingredients here, which are the same ingredients that I'd entered on the first page. If you realize you've made a mistake and haven't added everything that you needed, you can jump back to the first page there. And any changes you make are reflected in this list here as well. Now, it's really important at this stage that you make a decision about the scale of data that you have available for your inputs, energy use, and outputs. So, for example, you might have access to quantities for those three sections for just a single unit of the product under assessment, which in this case was the 100-gram retail burger. Or you might have instead quantities for 1 kilogram of the product under assessment, which is potentially the case if you've previously had an LCA done and you're entering data that has been the output of that LCA that used a 1 kilogram functional unit. We found from speaking to the members of our user testing group that the most common quantity of data available was in fact a batch processing run, which could be a day's worth of processing or a week's worth or a single batch, however it's defined. And so if that's the access to data that you have, then you'd enter that for each of the inputs, energy use and outputs. But just to be clear, you can use any magnitude you like as long as you're consistent across those three sections. So in this example here, I've assumed that a batch processing run for my 100-gram burger produces a final product of 100 kilograms. So let's say that's 1,000 of those burgers. And I've entered some fictitious quantities for the ingredients here and the energy use there as well. Now, you also need to enter the loss, and that's the percentage of food loss, both of the ingredients up here and of the final product down here. Both of those are important in the assessment, obviously. That data is generally available from your manufacturing facility. We found it from our research that most of the time users have that, but not all the time. So I'd say, depending on the relationship you have with your manufacturers, do your best to access that data. If you don't and you leave these numbers blank, especially in your first pass of just getting an indicative impact, then Foodsteps uses global averages. And that's, I guess, aligned with our general philosophy of giving you the opportunity to calculate an impact as quickly as possible and then going back to add some more detailed data later. And finally, in the processing section, the last thing that you enter is information about your co-products, if you have any. Now, a co-product, as we define it, is any other output of your processing stage that has economic value to you. So if you do have any co-products, then you enter them here. So you click add, you enter the name of a co-product here, which is for, I guess, visual purposes only. We don't use that name. You enter the weight, and you also enter the economic value. And if you do have co-products, you need to enter the economic value of all of the co-products that you have and of the product yourself. Now you can see this field here says pounds per kilogram. It could just as easily have said dollars per kilogram. In reality, Foodsteps doesn't use the raw value the currency itself. It just uses the ratio of these two numbers. So if you know, for example, that you have a product that is worth per unit weight twice as much as the co-product, then entering 2 and 1 there is sufficient, even if that's not the exact monetary values that you sell those products and co-products for. I'll assume this product does not have any co-products, and I'll stop there and click save. If you're creating the product for the first time, it'll say create rather than save, but does exactly the same thing. And you can see after a very short calculation time, you can start analysing the impact of your product and ingredients. I guess just to reiterate our stance that we've really taken this philosophy to heart of trying to design a quick, simple workflow for you to get an indicative impact as quickly as possible. And you can see even by talking through it, it's been relatively quick there. The time really is more about gathering the data and ensuring the accuracy of the data. But to get an indicative impact, you can do it in no time at all. This is a great segue into the next section of the demo, which is about analysing the impact of your product. And you do that on the page that we're on, which is the product details page. You're taken to this page here when you click on a card from the All Products page at when you first log in as well. The first thing to notice on this page is the system boundary at the top here. Now that, and I realise that some of you will be very well versed in this, but for those who aren't, this determines the life cycle stages and activities that are in scope and out of scope for the assessment that we're doing. Now in the free tier of Foodsteps, this will always say cradle to processing gate. And at a high level, this means that the assessment includes the impact of the farm stage for all of the ingredients, the processing and packaging of all of the ingredients, and the transport of ingredients from farm to a product processing facility. So that effectively is the impact of all of the ingredients that arrive at your processing facility from your suppliers. Plus, it also includes the impact that you generate yourself from your own processing at your processing facility. The next thing to consider on this page is functional unit. I guess I've used that term already in this presentation, but Foodsteps supports 2 options here, and this is the units in which we report your impact. Those 2 options are per kilogram of product, which is fairly standard for life cycle analyses. We also have the option of reporting an impact per product. And what per product means is that means the impact corresponding to the quantity of product that you defined when you created the product on the first tab. So if you remember for this product, the quantity was 100 grams. So you're now seeing the impact for 100 grams. Not surprisingly, the impact per kilogram is 10 times that. But different customers of yours may have different reporting requirements. So we support those 2 functional units, and we have some plans to support different functional units in future as well. Now, this product page where you analyse your impact has 4 sections, and each of those has a drop-down like this one at the top where you can switch between the 2 functional units. Same goes for the charts that I'll get to in a minute. I'll just cover each of those 4 sections, and some of them will be obvious, some of them won't. The first one here hopefully is obvious. This is a summary section which shows you the impact of your product in each of the impact categories. Now, Foodsteps, I guess Tom spoke about the 5 impact categories that we've been researching. This version supports 3 of those, which are GHG emissions, land use, and water use. The 2 more to come are eutrophication and acidification. But to be honest, I guess the question that Sharon asked in the intro is really interesting to us, because we found from our conversations with you all that beyond the first 3 to 5 of these, there's very different opinions globally and in different markets about which ones we should support. And there's also varying amounts of data available for each. So to be honest, we're going to learn from you all and usages and also as standards become more common around the world and invest in additional impact categories appropriately there. For some of the products and also ingredients, I'll get to the impact of ingredients later, but for some products and ingredients, there's just not enough data available to perform a useful impact assessment, particularly the case for land use and water use. And in these cases, Foodsteps displays the text impact unavailable here instead of showing a number. Unfortunately, in this version that I'm demonstrating, I can't show you that, and in fact, it doesn't show that text. But that will be the case certainly for some products that use ingredients where there's not sufficient data available. We'll acknowledge that there as well. I should have said before, if you're interested in any of our process or methodology for calculating impacts, then check out the Foodsteps forum as well. And there's, I guess, a blog system there. We'll be adding regular updates to when we make changes to the products, or also helpful information about methodology or other areas that might be relevant to the process of using our software. Each of these impact values has a data quality score, which, depending on your resolution, you may not be able to see there, but it's in the cards here underneath the impact values. What this does is it measures the quality of the data that's available to Foodsteps to assess the impact of a product or an ingredient. Now, Foodsteps uses thousands of life cycle assessment studies to calculate these impacts, but as I said before, global data availability varies by ingredient and region. So if you do see a lower DQS here, and it's not the case for this example, but if you do, then it usually indicates a lack of studies available globally for a particular ingredient. There's some information about our data quality calculation process that's available if you click on this icon here, and there's also more detail in our frequently asked questions in the Foodsteps forum about ways that you can increase or improve your data quality as well. This next chart here, hopefully it's obvious, is the ingredient breakdown chart. As you'd expect, it breaks down the impact of your ingredients, of your product by the ingredients. The pie chart here on the left gives you a pretty quick indication of how each ingredient is contributing to your product's impact. And the table over here gives you the same information, sorted in order of highest impact to lowest impact. You can also switch between the different impact categories here on the left. So you can see land use, water use, and GHG emissions. And as I said, you can switch between functional units there on the right. Now, if you have the greenhouse gas emissions impact category selected, then you get this extra column on the right, which is a rating, or a carbon rating, we sometimes call it. This rating is more of a user-friendly explanation of the relative impact of the ingredient itself considered in isolation. So this rating is based on the impact per kilogram of the ingredient itself, totally independent of the quantity you use in your product or how many products you use it in as well. And if you're interested in more information about how we define this rating, then check out the Foodsteps forum as well. From demonstrating this to our beta testers and from use by our beta testers, we found that it seems to be quite useful to help you make some decisions about your ingredients and sourcing location in particular, and maybe to help make some decisions about suppliers. This example isn't particularly interesting because there's only 3 ingredients, but you can imagine in your own production, if you have more ingredients and you have some flexibility in making decisions around your choice of ingredients or ingredient mixes or quantities, sourcing locations, then this could be a helpful way to do it. It's worth keeping in mind that this calculation just covers the impact of the ingredients themselves, and that includes the impact from farming, processing, packaging, and transport. It doesn't include the impact of your product processing itself, or anything obviously beyond our cradle to processing gate system boundary. So keep that in mind when you're using this as a reference to decision making. The next section here is a life cycle analysis chart. Some of you might be familiar with this way of representing data in a sunburst diagram, or it's really more of a donut chart at this level. It gives you more insight into where the impact of your product is coming from. And if you hover over any of these sections of the chart, it highlights that section, and the center of the chart will show you the life cycle stage it's referring to. Now, in the free version that I'm demonstrating here, you see the life cycle stages. So each one of these segments here is one of the life cycle stages. You can also see on the right-hand side the list of those in the table and the relative contribution. The absolute contribution. And again, you can switch between the impact categories here and also the functional unit here over on the right too. I guess one thing that's worth remembering with this chart is that the stages that we reference here incorporate the total impact of the product, which includes the contribution from each of the ingredients individually. So, for example, this processing number, if I hover over the processing section here, this includes processing of both each individual ingredient that usually will happen before the ingredient arrives at your facility, as well as your product processing itself, which might be the thing that you as a manufacturer have more control over. We've found, again, from speaking to some of you, that the chart might be helpful to help you make decisions about where to focus your reduction effort and where to spend your time. So, for example, you might have opportunities to reduce your processing impact by making your processing more efficient, your product processing more efficient if you have control over that. But if it turns out that most of your impact is actually coming from the farm stage, then maybe investing in changes to your processing isn't that a useful use of your time. You might instead decide to focus your efforts on your ingredients and suppliers as well. Also worth acknowledging that as much as we all care about sustainability, we know that sustainability isn't the only factor in making your decisions around reformulation. So we're obviously aware of that, but hopefully this is a helpful additional input to some of that decision making. The last chart on this page is an impact comparison chart. I'm just going to jump away from this page now, and we'll come back to this one later because it's super relevant for when we start talking about reformulation and scaling your processing facilities as well. So instead of getting into that now, I'm going to jump to the next section in the demo, which is ingredient analysis. And that happens in Foodsteps on the ingredients page. If you expand the inputs menu, you see ingredients here. So I'm going to click on ingredients. And what this page does is it lists all the ingredients that you've already used in all of your products that you've created. So when I started the demo, I'd already created a few products, and those ingredients are the ones that are used across all of those products. And this page, the purpose of this page is to help you get a better understanding of each of those ingredients in isolation. This is not the place for reformulation of your product. So if you're experimenting with different ingredients, rather than doing it here on the ingredients page, the best thing to do is to do it in the product editor that I just demonstrated. So you can perhaps take a copy or duplicate a product that you've created, edit the copy and try and experiment with different ingredients and processing, which I'll get to later as well. Back to the ingredients page though. So the format of this page is pretty straightforward. As you can see, it's a simple table with a row for each of the ingredients that you've used in a product. The ingredient origin column here is the country from which the ingredient is sourced. Now, if you're on the Foodsteps free tier, this is set to average sourcing. And for average sourcing, what this means is this is a message to Foodsteps to determine an average impact for the ingredient based on typical sourcing for that ingredient when it's used in food production in your country, the country that the food is processed in. So Foodsteps uses international trade and production data to determine that. So for example, if you're based in the US, Foodsteps knows that for the sunflower oil ingredient, whenever it's used in the US, X% of sunflower oil is sourced from Spain, Y% from Italy, Z% might be produced locally. And we use that data to weight the impact calculation that we generate for sunflower oil by those proportions, looking at studies that are local to those regions. The next column here tells you, hopefully obviously, the number of products in which each of those ingredients is used. We have a data quality column here, which tells you the quality of the data available to Foodsteps to assess the impact. Now, that's just specific to the individual ingredient. And as I said before, a lower DQS usually indicates a lack of studies available globally for particular ingredients. So if you're seeing in your product assessment a lower data quality and you're interested why, then the ingredients page will show you the reason for that. This data quality column here, if you hover over one of these ratings, and this rating system again is available both on this tooltip here and in the Foodsteps forum. If you hover over the rating, you can see a score, and it's a score out of 5. In this example, it's saying 2.9 out of 5, which is right on the boundary of what we classify as fair or good. The next one down is 3.9 out of 5, which is right on the boundary of good and very good. Yeah, that gives you, I guess, some insight into the level of data that we've been able to research to include in your ingredient assessment. I guess the most interesting data in this page is not that, it's the impact data. So that's these last two columns here, or at least two for GHG intensity. Again, if you've got the option of switching between the impact categories in this drop down here, and what you see here is an intensity impact value. And what intensity means is it's per unit weight, in this case per kilogram of the ingredient itself. Again, it's independent of how much of it you use or in how many products you use it. It's just specific to the ingredient itself. If the impact category you've chosen is GHG emissions, you also get this extra column here, which is the carbon rating. So much like for products, we have a similar rating for ingredients. And this again might be helpful if you want to use a friendly way of describing the impact value. And that's it for ingredient analysis. We're now going to talk through a couple of exploratory use cases for Foodsteps that I hope will resonate with actual use cases that you might have. And this might vary again depending on your the stage of development of your product or your company, and also whether you're interested in more of the reduction focus on impact or the communication focus. But either way, hopefully you find these two examples useful. I'm going to jump back to the product details page now and talk through that fourth section on the product details page that I skipped over before, which is the impact comparison chart here, right down the bottom. This chart gives you a side-by-side comparison of your product and another product, and you choose the comparison product from this drop-down menu here. I'm just going to start, if I start typing into this text box here, then it narrows the list to just the products with that text again, and I'll choose one that your account will be pre-populated with, which is a comparison product. We think that this could be useful. In fact, again, feedback from users, this chart could be useful if you're comparing it to another of your own products that you've already created and you already manufacture. It could be useful for an experimental use case where you're looking at products that you might make in future if you make changes to ingredients or sourcing or suppliers or scaling your facilities, and that's the demo that I'll give in a minute. It also might be useful when you're comparing yourself to a sample product in similar category to yours. So we had some, I guess, pretty consistent feedback that obviously in the alt protein industry, we're interested in comparing ourselves to traditional proteins, and that's why we've pre-populated your accounts with a range of 10 or so traditional proteins. I guess it's something, a bit of a caveat here with these comparisons. They're potentially useful for internal conversations about new product lines that you're building, or competitors more generally in your field, categories of competitors. But just be wary that because these comparisons are partially based on the data that you've entered yourself, and also the comparison itself isn't validated by Foodsteps, these comparisons aren't suitable for communicating outside your organisation or for making public claims, but certainly could be useful for internal discussions. Now, I'm going to jump to the reformulation example. So I'm again going to look at a really simple case where you're the manufacturer of this soy protein burger that we've created at the start, and you're considering switching from a soy protein isolate to a pea protein isolate as the protein source, and you're interested in any potential effect on the environmental impact. So the way that you would do that is from the All Products page, you'd create that pea protein burger and enter the information about that burger in exactly the same way as you did for the soy burger. Again, for expediency, here's one that I've prepared earlier. I've used exactly the same ingredients and quantities and processing information as for the soy example, but I've used pea protein isolate instead of soy protein isolate. Not a super realistic example because the quantities are most likely to change. And as I said before, you'll have other ingredients as well. I guess for demonstration purposes, it's showing you how you can compare a future product to a current product. If I then save that new product, scroll down to the impact comparison down the bottom, then you can see that it's probably obvious from my last example that there's a quick way of comparing an existing product, a new product here on the left in this case, to an existing product. You can see in this example the numbers are slightly different, not significantly different. This on the left shows you I guess, relative percentage difference in each of those impact categories for the two. And again, the more data that you enter when you're defining those products, the more accurate the example will be. I guess for the scaling example, it's very similar. We've heard that it's going to be quite common, especially for early stage companies pitching for investment, to want to be able to project what your impact might be with a different process or different ingredients or different size of processing facility. And particularly, it could be an investment which increases the size of your processing facility that makes it more efficient. So again, here's an example that I've prepared earlier. This is a future mythical version of the soy protein burger. Not that one, sorry, but the one that says future. I've used the same ingredients as the initial soy protein burger, but I've increased the quantities so that it produces around about 10 times the final product with about 5 times the energy use and slightly less than 10 times the quantity of ingredients. Again, not a necessarily totally realistic example, but again, for the purpose of demonstrations, what that does is calculates a impact value for each of those categories for this future product. And if you compare it to the existing product, hopefully you can see that the existing product has higher impact in each of those categories, and that might be a helpful talking point. Obviously, along with the other things you consider like cost and nutrition in your conversations around scaling. Okay, that is the end of the demonstration part of this presentation. I guess I just wanted to jump on to next steps now. Hopefully what you're seeing there is a good overview of the free tier functionality. As I said, it's not a deep dive into everything that Foodsteps does, but enough to get you started. And the way that you get started is to browse to this URL here. You can also scan the QR code, which should take you straight there. The slide deck will be available after the webinar as well. So if you don't get this down now, don't fear. And also a screen recording of this will be available on the GFI YouTube site. Okay, that is all that I have. I'll stop sharing now and hand back to Sharon for the Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul, for taking us all through that. Hopefully that gave everyone a sense of when they jump through the product, exactly what they can start doing. So we've got quite a few questions from everyone. Thank you to everyone who submitted them. We're trying to combine them together when there were some questions that were similar and by category. Feel free to keep asking questions as we go. So first, we'll start with one actually, Paul, for you. I'm sure hopefully your voice is still there after all that talking. But the question is, if the website can be used by anyone, if they need to create an account, just people through who can use this and how.
Question from Khan. Yes, absolutely. We'd be ecstatic if you're able to share with your customers as well. I guess the only request we have is that they sign up individually to the platform in the same way that we ask everyone to. We don't have a limit on the number of users per organisation, but the self-service sign-up workflow doesn't facilitate multiple users from the same organisation having access to the same organisation's data. But if there are cases where an organisation has multiple users and you'd like to share data between members of the same company, then that's very much a part of our system. We just need to set that up manually.
Thanks. And yes, Khan had a related question. This was actually from someone else and a bit more broad, just on whether anyone can use the platform.
Yeah, we have a process when you request to sign up look at the organisation and determine that it's a food manufacturer. I guess we've also fielded requests from many other organisations that we're interested in sharing the software with as well. So I'd say if you're a food manufacturer, we'll approve access straight away. Other organisations we're most likely to as well, but would likely involve a conversation with Foodsteps as part of that process.
Thank you, Paul. Very helpful. And then great, thank you for answering the question from Colin as well on sharing this with customers. There was a related question from someone else who has a B2B product, and they were wondering how that works, given that their product will be a small percentage of inclusion for their customers. That inclusion percent may differ. And so I think that, Bill, perhaps that's something that you can address.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. So yeah, I think we see it as a really big piece of the value of our software that we already have a huge customer base outside of alternative proteins, for example, in food service. This means that once you've assessed our products using our platform and had them verified by us, we can then make them available to all of those businesses that buy from you. They can then use the product impacts to increase the quality of their assessments, whether they're scope 3 assessments or assessing the impact of products that they make or meals that they serve. In terms of the specific question around different end uses of your product, what you can do with the premium version of the software is produce an LCA certificate for your assessment for a functional unit of product, say 1 kilogram of the product. You can then share this with your customers and they can take a proportion based on the total weight used.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next question, Joe, is also for you, which is how many ingredients are in the database today?
Great. I like answering this one because I'm proud of it. But in our database, we hold the impacts of around 4,000 individual food items, which we think give a really great representation across the food system, both in terms of the breadth that we have in those, but also in terms of the volume of underlying data that we have behind a lot of those estimates. As Paul mentioned, these impacts are provided by a combination of peer-reviewed academic LCAs, industry LCAs by businesses, and modelling that Foodsteps has done to establish the impacts of various things. Probably an important point to mention is that we spent a lot of time at Foodsteps making sure that all of these impacts are harmonised, and so reworking the modelling in some of the data sources to ensure that when we have 4,000 impacts, they actually are all comparing like for like.
Great, and two related questions that we just received. So one is if companies can input their own primary data.
Yeah, definitely companies can input their own primary data. We would encourage them to input, as Paul has just demonstrated, data on all of their processing and things like that through the platform. I guess there is another route to include incorporating data you have into our platform, which is if you've previously done your own full LCA and have the results of that in a report and all of the detail about that LCA, you can contact us and we can go through a third-party review of that LCA in order to incorporate it into our platform. But that's not currently something that happens through the platform. You'd have to contact us separately.
Great. And then on some of the comparison use cases that Paul walked through, the person's asking if they could compare their own product with another product that they have not themselves produced. So using those kind of one of those 4,000 ingredients that you currently have. So they gave the example of if they produce pea protein, can they compare with soy protein in general?
Yeah, I can answer that one. Yes, they can. I guess the drop-down list that I demonstrated only allowed you to choose products that you've created in Foodsteps, but you can create a product with a single ingredient. In that case, you could create your own product, which was a a soy protein product with just the single ingredient, and that would give you a representative comparison of the soy protein that Foodsteps has studies for in our database specific to your.
Great.
And just to add to that as well, we're looking to produce a series of benchmark products as well from GFI, what we understand, and then have that as possibility to also see where your product stands against those benchmark products. You're on mute, Sharon.
Yep, of course I am. Yes, that's a great point. If there are any benchmark products that you all want to see, feel free to reach out to GFI, let us know, and we'll certainly keep that into account. So then we've got a couple of questions in terms of how to share this information publicly, if it can be shared publicly. So can the LCA report be published? Can companies speak about their environmental performance, or is it still necessary to go through some kind of additional verification process?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. So yeah, in order to publish the results of the assessments that you do using the platform, we do require you to go through our verification process. So you can create as many assessments as you'd like for internal use. So that might be to see how changes in production efficiency are affecting your impact. However, once you actually wish to talk about the impacts of a product publicly, we require that you do that verification in order to confirm the accuracy of the assessment you've done. So during that verification process, we conduct plausibility checks to confirm that the data you've entered is in sort of believable ranges and there haven't been any errors in terms of the orders of magnitude and things like that. We also review evidence to confirm the data you've entered is real data. And we also would gather additional information to understand kind of the quality of the data entered. So as a result of that process, or during that process rather, we may suggest that more research is done on some of the ingredients if there's not enough applicable data in the Foodsteps database. This might involve us reaching out to your suppliers and engaging with them. We may also ask for additional explanation or evidence from you as to how the data you've entered actually links to a particular product or what you've shared with us in terms of the evidence. I guess it is worth saying at this point, to be transparent, that in extreme cases, we might not grant verification if we don't think that the assessment is an accurate statement of the product's impact. In general, however, we don't expect that to be the case. We expect to be able to work with everyone through this process, and we hope that it will help you all to speak about your impact with a lot more confidence. I guess one final point in terms of what we then output. So after the impact is verified, we will provide you with an LCA certificate, which will help you to share your impact with all of the context and detail needed, such that anyone you share it to can kind of understand what's happened in the calculation, what kind of data sits behind it. But then we can also work with you to help create a much more detailed impact report if you would like that as well, including sort of, I guess, recommendations and analysis.
Great, that's really helpful. And maybe now is a good point to clarify kind of which pieces of this are part of the free software, which parts are part of the premium. I think, Joe, what you just spoke through is part of premium. And someone was just asking generally if there's a fee. So Paul, I don't know if you'd like to provide a little clarification there.
Yeah, I guess at a high level, it's approximately 1,500 UK pounds per product. So we have a per product pricing structure, but also there's a bit of nuance on there that's best left to individual discussions with Foodsteps. But at a high level, that's
right. And that's just for certain premium features, right? So quite a few features that we've talked through today, most of the ones you went through in your demo are part of the free software.
Yeah, everything that I demonstrated is free and available to use as soon as you sign up.
Wonderful. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so we now have a couple of questions in terms of the alternative protein technologies that can be modeled. Tom mentioned earlier on that right now, mostly what is supported is plant-based and biomass fermentation. There's work to be done on other platforms. So the questions were on whether software can support plant molecular farming or PMF, if there is a timeline related to precision fermentation, and then also for cultivated meat, understanding that this is difficult for data gathering, if there are general areas of inputs that are being prioritized and where might they be sourced. So quite a few questions that are packaged into one. Tom, is that something you could take?
Oh yeah, and Joe and Paul, please feel free to add on. But yeah, so we've really focused initially on getting a really broad and good coverage database on plant-based products, and some fermentation, biomass fermentation products as well. And so that means that we have a little bit less, or kind of, yeah, still exploring how to include precision fermentation and certainly cultivated meat. Regardless of this, however, I would really recommend everyone to just sign up to the software. It is free to sign up and just start exploring the platform, understanding the functionality, and then seeing what ingredients that are there. And we've included a process as well where you can submit requests to Foodsteps to say, okay, these are some of the ingredients that you haven't got. Can you add it to your list of things that we can start prioritizing, gathering data on? I'm not saying that's going to be an instant process, because some of these things there is just no data available at the moment. But it gives us a really good sense of the priorities, what your priorities are, and where we should focus our efforts. And from a GFI perspective, you know, where in the industry we can start kind of coalescing actors to start really diving into gathering this data as well. We hope to be able to support all of the businesses soon. We don't have a specific time frame around precision fermentation, but because our focus at the moment was really on getting everything ready for this launch, but it will be one of our top priorities coming out of this process to really think about how we can include precision fermentation and what the barriers will be to that. Specifically on plant molecular farming, again, I really recommend just having a conversation with us, you know, directly on that. The software includes a huge database of different plants. And so, yeah, we would have to look really specifically at like what ingredients you're looking for. And then we can provide some advice on how to model that, either with the platform or whether it's included within this particular scope or not.
I might just add to that as well, or reiterate what Tom said. Please tell us, please play around with the platform and tell us ingredients that are not there that to help guide us. It might not have been obvious, but the software is really technology agnostic. It's really the database with all the ingredients that is where we've invested in plant-based and specifically first. So yeah, once we know of and have done the research on available data for other technologies, we will add support for.
Great, thank you. Our next question is on the data quality score, and there's a question on whether there is a benchmark for what counts as a good data quality score.
Yeah, I can jump in on this. Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's worth saying that we invested quite a lot of time in building out this automated data quality score that we have. It's really important to us to be transparent about where there exists better or worse data in our database to support the data that we actually provide to your assessments, as well as also giving you information on the quality of data that you provide during the assessment. So yeah, as I said, to help communicate all of that, we've built an automated data quality score for the data in the Foodsteps database behind all of the thousands of food items that returns impact for. The actual benchmarks in terms of like how we score good versus poor data, they come from the data quality framework in the GHG protocol, which is very widely used. So good data is over 3 out of 5, for example. We also, as I said, dig into the data quality of the assessment itself during the verification process, because this is really important to understand how well the observations in our database actually apply to all of the ingredients that you have entered. So this is where someone from Foodsteps will look at that and basically say, okay, maybe we need to do a bit more ingredient research here if that's not a good fit in some cases.
Excellent. And we'll keep going with a whole lot of more questions, but I do want to point out that there is a lot of very kind support and gratefulness for the tool in the chat. So as you all answer questions, keep that in mind. The next question is on whether this analysis conforms to ISO standard.
Yeah, I can take that one as well. I guess at a high level, the platform itself, we've built that to align to the GHG protocol and the relevant ISO standards, but we haven't been independently verified to those. And I would say that if you want your assessment to conform to specific standards, you should get in touch with us and we can explore exactly how to do that, because there might be additional pieces for a given standard that we need to do on top of the existing functionality that we've built in the platform.
All right, so now we'll move on to some more detailed questions we received on functionality. One question that was asked twice in different ways is related to energy types and whether various energy types can be entered on the platform.
Yeah, great. Cool. I can answer this one as well. So at launch, we're supporting the energy input as grid electricity in the production location. That's based on our belief that this is the most commonly used energy source for processing. We do plan to add more energy sources as we understand further which use your processing sites. So I guess similarly to please tell us which ingredients you use which are missing from our database. Please tell us which energy sources you use which is missing from our platform at the moment.
Great. And something else related to the location of production and raw materials. Will there be an ability to differentiate between sources of materials and transport, processing location, etc.?
Yeah, definitely. So this is something we have already built the functionality to basically tell us, okay, I source this raw material from this place. So we've got the location specificity for the production of your inputs. Currently, the transport of those inputs is just based on average transport impacts, but we are planning to build, I guess, some more specific modules and functionalities such that if you know that your pineapples come on a boat, you know the route it takes, you could tell us things like that. Yeah.
Great. And the next question is if you'll be adding in a life cycle stage for the impact of farm inputs, like nitrogen fertilizer from natural gas, pesticides from fossil fuels, and other key agricultural inputs.
Yeah, this is a great question. So our farm stage as displayed on the platform, that includes the impact of producing any inputs that are then used on the farm. So yeah, that's the level of granularity at which we report at the moment, grouped together into that farm stage. But certainly if we hear the feedback that more granularity in our reporting would be really useful to businesses for any reason, then we can certainly consider doing that.
Great. And a little bit further in the life cycle, when we get to the manufacturing, this is for plant-based meat in particular, there was a question on the use of different types of extrusion technologies, like high moisture extruders.
Yeah, I can take this one as well. Yeah, I think like broadly we'd say with the specific kinds of technologies like those that you should be able to enter the data that you have on the energy use of those and the amounts of inputs, of various inputs needed, and also the amounts of all the different outputs from those in order to model their impacts, I guess, as well as the losses, as Paul demonstrated. So yeah, we can assess those, and yeah.
Perfect. Okay, 2 questions about water use. So the first is whether your water use impact category includes blue, green, and gray water.
Yeah, good question. So at the present, our water use is only accounting for blue water use. So that's the fresh water that is withdrawn in order to produce the product, and not accounting for things like the green water, which is the rainwater, or the grey water, which is kind of the water used in order to assimilate the pollution from the product. But that's certainly something that we could look at in the future.
Great. And the other water use question is quite specific. It's asking, what about water or steam that is used in unit operations that are decketed in such types of processing? In such types of processing, water is used to transfer heat, but not imparted.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So I guess in cases like this, we would expect you to enter the volume of water input to the process, as well as, I suppose, any energy used to heat the water or turn it into steam if its function is to transfer heat. And then if the water is then output from the process without being imparted to the product, we would then expect you to add it as an output and make it clear that it doesn't have an economic value, so the allocation works properly. That's important because obviously the water supply has an impact that we want to capture, and then also the heating of the water has an impact that we want to capture in order to ensure our system boundary is complete.
Moving on to land use, there's a question on whether you factor in land use change emissions for plant-based proteins.
Yeah, so yes, the short answer is yes, we do. For all of the food item impacts in our database, we include the emissions of land use change, so whether that's burning or deforestation or things like that. Yeah, that's all included where applicable.
Excellent. So important. Okay, I think we're getting to the end of our questions. We've got 2 left, unless anybody adds in any others, which are on specific ingredients that users are interested in. So the first one is whether Rubisco is a protein source that can be used in the model. And Tom, that one's for you.
Yeah, so at the moment, Rubisco or Lemna is not available as one of the proteins, but if it's a priority, then we'd love to add it to the list. And you know, again, it's one of these really novel proteins. There's very little data available for it. So yeah, if it's a priority for the business, then yeah, we're happy to include it in the list for our research.
Rubisco is fascinating, so that would be interesting to see. And then the other ingredient that users were curious about is seaweed.
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. So yeah, we do have the impact of seaweed in our database, but this is somewhere where the specificity of our data is a little bit more limited. So we don't actually hold many observations for the impacts of specific kinds of seaweed. This is an area that we are actively looking to add more data to our database in. So please do share any information you have on which seaweeds you would like to see reported in the tool.
Great. So those are all of our questions. I think we would be answered 20 to 30. So thank you to everyone in the audience for being so engaged and for asking such insightful questions, as well as specific questions to what you need that already starts to give Foodsteps some feedback on what is valuable to them. And actually one more question came in and we have enough time. So let me stop my summary, ask one more question and then I'll get us finished up here. So there is a question whether it's possible to compare based on nutritional functional unit instead of the per kilogram or per kilogram of protein.
I think Joe and I are looking at each other about who should answer that one. So you cannot currently do that in Foodsteps, but it's very much on our roadmap. We've had a lot of requests for that, and we've been talking amongst ourselves about how to implement that. When I hinted at potential future functional units, that is very much top of the list. So I'd say not now, but stay tuned.
Excellent. And that is a good way to finish, and I think summarizing a lot of your answers to the questions, which there's so much functionality already here, a lot of support that Foodsteps can provide, especially in the premium version, a lot of ability for companies to enter their own data, and that makes the platform really flexible, which I think is excellent, alongside, of course, the 4,000 ingredients that are input in there for everyone to use. And then a lot more to come, right? This is a really exciting launch, so much that is hopefully of use to the alternative proteins community, but this is a nascent, quickly growing field. Many more ingredients are being developed and used every day. And of course, for more novel areas like precision fermentation, for proteins in particular, plant molecular farming, cultivated meat, there just needs to be enough data. And that's something that the Foodsteps team with GFI support will be monitoring very closely and adding in when there's kind of quality data to do so. So a lot more to come, but a lot already here. As was discussed by Paul, by Tom, by everyone, feel free to sign up for a demo, register for the product, check it out, provide feedback. And if you want to reach out to either team directly, Foodsteps or GFI, there's contact information at the one of the last slides of the presentation, which we will email out to everyone as a follow-up alongside a recording of the webinar. It will also be on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and take a look at all these details. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. We hope this has been valuable, and we look forward to engaging on this product moving forward. Thank you so much, Paul, Joe, and Tom, for your time today.